Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Brian if you're new around here, and if you're a returning subscriber, welcome back. You look marvelous today. That's what you get for subscribing, by the way. Free compliments at the start of these videos and maybe a few hidden surprises buried later on in the video itself. Today we're talking about Yosuke Saito, his interview about We Are Vana'diel. This is actually episode 3. If you missed any of the earlier episodes, you can be sure to check the cards, and that will take you basically to where you need to go, but you can also check the playlists in the description of this video itself. This again is going to be talking about his experience with Dragon Quest X, but how Final Fantasy XI it was an influence on that. Honestly, this We Are Vana'diel is something that I really enjoy making. So for those of you who've liked that smash button already here on this series, I do appreciate it. That helps as a free way of supporting the channel and sharing out these videos, because generally Final Fantasy XI content isn't necessarily, I guess, the biggest drawing of attention here on YouTube, but I'm happy to sit down and talk to you guys about this and share this information with you. There is actually part 4. It's already published, so you guys be looking forward to that here probably maybe later today, or if nothing else, earlier tomorrow as well. So yeah, let's go ahead and dive in. Currently he is or essentially the original producer for Final Fantasy or Dragon Quest X Online, which is still only in Japan, and they're going to be doing a Dragon Quest X, I guess, single player version probably coming here to the West, and more Dragon Quest stuff is here headed our way in the future, so I'm personally very excited about that. Anyway, Dragon Quest X Online, a place for Dragon Quest fans to enjoy themselves whenever they want. Dragon Quest X is the first online title in Dragon Quest series. Did your experience with Final Fantasy XI play any part in the decision to go online? And Saito says, I didn't have too much to say about the content of the game. However, a major prerequisite I had for the team was to make the game as enjoyable even when playing solo. Dragon Quest X Online has a system where you can recruit support characters at the bar to accompany you on your adventures. In a similar manner, previous entries in the series allowing you to go on adventures as a solo player. As it was for the first online game in the Dragon Quest series, and likely many players' first experience with online games, I have also advised the team to make Dragon Quest X Online more casual compared to existing online titles. Aside from that, I told them that the players shouldn't be able to separate from their friends on different servers, and I think that's all I personally brought up. The director at the time is Mr. Jin Fujisawa. Took it from there and modeled the game in various ways to be friendlier for Dragon Quest fans, such as removing the log display typically seen in an MMORPG, and implementing a command-based system similar to previous Dragon Quest titles. Dragon Quest X Online certainly seems to have attracted a different audience compared to other previous titles like Final Fantasy XI and Final Fantasy XIV. The mainline titles in Dragon Quest series are also released at a slower pace, so that there are often stories that players got into Dragon Quest in elementary school who, by the time the next mainline entry was released, were too busy with high school and entrance exams. I was discontent with the way that, and we wanted Dragon Quest X Online to be a place for Dragon Quest fans to enjoy themselves whenever they want. Perhaps housewives could meet up in game to discuss their plans for dinner, and people could invite each other to to coin boss fights and other lighthearted conversation. Dragon Quest X Online is an aspect of the community management that the Dragon Quest series as a whole, we refrained from making it a game too hardcore. And after all, there were already many hardcore MMOs out there, and as you may well play Final Fantasy XI if that was what you're looking for. By then, Final Fantasy XI reached maturity with a wide selection of casual and high-end content, and then there was no way of ensuring a title could outdo that. So I may have the consciously welcome to the channel, new people, tried to differentiate that game from that. Sounds like you began considering what an online version of Dragon Quest should be rather than replicating your experience playing 11. Yes, considering that all things in 11 were accomplished up till then, recreating something similar would be very difficult. So Dragon Quest X Online was also designed to be easier to get up into those would be playing an online game for the first time. There are many similar concepts to ease Final Fantasy XI for those who might be unfamiliar with these online games. Now, I kind of want to say one of the things Yoshi has said in a recent interview, talking about the difficulty of even making another online Final Fantasy game, and how do you move people who are especially happy with the current version of Final Fantasy and move them into the new version of the game itself. And just One of the things we've seen, I think, with MMOs in general, so many people were copying WoW because essentially WoW kind of solidified a lot of the market, but they didn't do enough to say why they were different and why you should go to play their game over World of Warcraft, because it was so similar and also feature lacking. It was like, it's the same thing with what we see with Destiny 2 right now, having full cross-play, cross-save support. If another game wants to try to jump into that looter shooter online space, they're going to have to compete with what Destiny is already doing. Otherwise, you're going to just return to where your friends are, and that's going to be wherever it's easiest to play together. So that's actually, like, that makes sense to me, what he's saying here, in context to what we see generally trending within online games. All right. I don't think we looked in it too deeply. However, most of the MMORPGs that I've played for research took a stance of having players resolve their own disputes over things like claiming monsters and PKing, player killing in this case. I felt like it wouldn't be acceptable by Final Fantasy fans, and that tried to prevent the situation as much as possible within the different game systems. Now, both Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest series have elements that are expected to be in their games. There were situations where you could subvert those expectations to make an online game. Or were there. The game world is shared between numerous players, and I recall in the event team struggling with the fact that characters that disappeared over the course of the story couldn't be displayed on the map. In my case, I was unsure where to implement ultimate weapons like Excalibur, which typically appeared towards the end of the game. I consulted Mr. Tanaka, Hiroshima Tanaka in this case, originally producer of 11, that it was around that when we were implementing Dynamis, and he answered, shouldn't it be okay to add them now? And the one problem I encountered due to the never-ending nature of the game. How was it for Dragon Quest X Online? In a similar vein, Mr. Masui's story, MMORPGs typically have to show the same world both veteran players and those that just started the game. When we were coming up with the story, we really struggled being unable to destroy or change anything in the world. So I was told everyone at the beginning, we can't destroy anything in Dragon Quest X Online, so let's completely destroy everything in the offline part at the start of the game, and that's our only chance. That explains why such tragedy befell the starting village. When I was talking about Dragon Quest VIII with Mr. Hori, the creator of the Dragon Quest series, I told him the events of the first village didn't seem at all dire, since only one house caught on fire. And the characters' models faithfully recreated Akira Toriyama's art style at the beginning with Dragon Quest VIII, but I felt like it took away something of the urgency in the storytelling. So in Dragon Quest X Online, I wanted to go with complete destruction for the Dragon Quest team rather than Mr. Hori. It was the other staff members who have preconceived notions of what Dragon Quest should be, and it felt like everyone was careful not to tread on Mr. Hori's ideas. But Mr. Hori himself didn't really have that mentality, and I got the impression that he lived by a creed like anything goes if it is interesting, fun, and can surprise the players. R-rated themes are obviously out of the question, but aside from those kinds of outliers, there were many things that I couldn't do because of the uncharacteristics of the series. In that sense, I felt very free when working on the game. Was there any supervision for Mr. Hori about the contents of the game? It was a way more than just supervision. We held weekly meetings late into the night to discuss the scenario that we ate bento lunches, and the game systems were also discussed and choosing in a similar fashion. Did Mr. Hori take any different approaches for the game since it was online? Mr. Hori talked about how we should have all sorts of characters since they were going to be many players. Since Akira Toriyama was illustrating the world, I thought Dragon Quest X Online world would be like a penguin village in a series Dr. Slump, where the characters were anywhere between 2 heads tall and 6 heads tall and ranged from youth to elderly characters. However, Mr. Hori and Mr. Futsua mentioned, couldn't we add more than just humans, and added all sorts of different races? In that sense, I think that they were able to create something several times better than what I had in mind. I see, so those races came from Mr. Hori's idea? I think they were a result of a discussion between Mr. Hori and Mr. Fujisawa. By the way, how are the player races in Final Fantasy XI selected? We started with several different races that we felt should be in the game, with variations like macho characters and witches, and were many more than the current 5 races, but I had to ask them to narrow it down, as it shouldn't have been impossible to accommodate the equipment designs for each one. Not only that, but each race in Final Fantasy XI would require unique animations for weapons, skills, and casting spells too. But during the process of narrowing it down, Mr. Sakagachi one of the founders of the Final Fantasy series, and Mr. Kato, the plot writer until Rise of Zilliard, insisted on keeping a grandpa character, so it made it as a face type for the Elven. So the Elven face type 8 is because of Mr. Sawagachi and Mr. Kato's wishes. More races and gender options were meant to be in production workload and increase the memory, so it was something that we agonized quite a bit over. As for Tataru, we really wanted to add options for both male and female characters, so we pulled it off by giving them the same animations and equipment to reduce development costs. So the current 5 races are at a bare minimum for where we felt players would be able to pick out a character that suits their taste. It would also have added more if it was possible. Now, returning to the Dragon Quest X Online topic, what was the project already in motion before Square Enix merged? The project was already in motion before the merge. When the companies merged, I was told about someone who was a fit for the Dragon Quest X Online development team, which was my first encounter with Aoma. Koji Aoma, the technical director and producer of Dragon Quest X Online. My first impression of him was, I don't think I can be friends with this guy. All right. His demeanor has softened nowadays, but at the time, he was like the embodiment of a scary programmer and very stubborn-minded. Over a long period of time, I gradually got him to loosen up, and though it could be that he simply grew milder with age. In a way, though, you can rest assured that you have programmers like that. I personally took for 2 types of programmers in a team. One is the stubborn-minded programmer who has a firm definition of what can be done or not. The other is the type of programmer that says something can be done even if it isn't usually considered possible, and tackles the problem in unconventional ways, leaving you with hope that it might actually be possible. When it comes to work, my wish is for those 2 types of programmers to balance each other out. I think I'm part of the second programmer aspect. I'm like, yeah, let's figure it out. Let's do it. We'll find a way. I get the impression that you are good at finding these kind of people, Mr. Saito. I mean, it's about all I do for work after all. But it's a very crucial job. Getting stubborn-minded people to loosen up isn't as simple as it sounds either. What was the perspective of Dragon Quest X Online, Mr. Mitsui? Before X Online was released, Mr. Akoi, whom I'd worked with in Final Fantasy IV and Chrono Trigger, sent me an email asking how Nuzul Isle was implemented, and I wasn't directly involved with that Nuzul Isle project, so I was the person in charge of relaying their response to Mr. Akoi. After that, I said, why don't we all get together and talk more openly as developers, and held a few gatherings together with Dragon Quest X Online's development team and our teams so they were familiar with each other before their game launched. There were these gatherings for your team to provide advance or exchange information with them regarding the online development. Now, I think Dragon Quest X Online's project had already proceeded quite a bit by then. While it wasn't a game I worked on, we had all these interactions, so I was glad when X Online launched. Also, X Online's battles have a feature where you can push other entities around and even push monsters and inhibit their movements. When I first heard about that, I considered it an unthinkable thing. They could hardly believe it, but surely enough, they accomplished it in their game. From that came Mr. Fujisawa's ideas. As someone who had new to online development games, he thought it was odd that when the characters ignored each other's collisions and passing through each other. So we discussed with Akoma about making the characters' collisions interact with each other, who said it was extremely difficult, but we pushed through and told him we wanted to try it anyway. Personally, I thought there was no way it'd be possible. In fact, it thought it was impossible right up until I saw it myself when 10 launched. If it was a part of the Dragon Quest X Online team, I was probably taken to Mr. Ikoya's side. I also think that Kids Time was really neat. There were people who said that they couldn't play 11 because it was an online game, and I understand the uneasiness that they might feel about online aspect of the game. 10 Online allows players to casually try out the game during its free-to-play Kids Time, and it was impressed by how it comes together with the younger audience into the world of online games. So if you guys aren't aware, you have to pay a subscription for Dragon Quest X Online, but they had Kids Time, these blocks of time where anybody could play without needing a subscription, and I honestly thought was interesting. And one of the things I've often thought about, like how it would impact Final Fantasy XIV in this way. So at the end of the day, it obviously hasn't trickled out to any other game since then, so it is what it is. All right. Even then, it was a sort of a last resort for us. I remember we considered all sorts of ideas when implementing Kids Time. Aside from that, I was moved from the 14 team and approached Mr. Saito to ask about how he kept Dragon Quest X Online's development team together, and it was then he showed me the infographic called the Motivation Map, which shows what players would be able to do and how their world would be expanding as they progress through the game. I found it profound, and it made me aware just how important it was for teams to have a unified vision of a completed game. The Dragon Quest X Online team had all sorts of things to ensure everyone was on the same track, like monthly columns aimed at the world team, department newsletters, and all hands-on meetings. In the midst of that, the director still felt like he needed to improve communication within the team, which was when I had the planning team create a motivation map, but it isn't actually not all that complicated. We list up all the things that are currently in development under the categories Battle Scenario Other, and which makes it easy to spot areas in which we're falling short or to put too much emphasis, to make it easier to organize and plan for the future, so we shared it among the team. As game development continues to be sanctioned off into specialized teams, sharing them overall vision becomes more important. Was the monthly column something like a letter from the producer aimed at the team? We wrote all about the irrelevant topics in the column too. Was this something you had before lunch? Yes, it was something we did in the development process. First, we had the development team submit a weekly report. There was essentially just comments for themselves about what they did for the week or be working on the following week. But I told them to write it for themselves anyway, and if there wasn't anything on their mind, they could include that was at the beginning of the report, which I would look through and provide a response for those where it seemed necessary. Looking through all of those weekly reports and responding to any that required replies was my job every Monday morning. The column was something that I'd write every month after taking all of that into consideration. Did you have anything like that with the Final Fantasy XI team? I mentioned this in our conversation with Mr. Tanaka, but the Final Fantasy XI team was a combination of 4 or 5 different teams that had been working separately until then. Each of them had different workspace culture, and it was difficult to have them all follow the same creative process. We decided a few rules in areas that we actually had overlap, while the rest of us handled individually by our respective teams, so in a way we valued working separately. Oh, and it's not as if we didn't get along. Sounds like it was simply a difference of workflow for each team. In the current Final Fantasy XI team, I've asked that everyone write a daily report about something unrelated to Final Fantasy XI. They tell me about their cat or how it started raining and they went to go pick up their children, and I believe that all sorts of communication is also vital during times like COVID-19 pandemic situation where we can't meet face to face. We wouldn't have seen the daily report or weekly report if we could all meet face to face every day, but when the project involves a lot of people, it's difficult to keep things going without some sort of communication. The weekly report is something that the Final Fantasy XIV team does as well, and the Final Fantasy XI team's daily report is actually something we copied from Final Fantasy XIV's team. But if we go further back, it all started with Mr. Saito. After all, Final Fantasy XIV's producer and director Naoki Yoshida was from the Dragon Quest Online team after all. You could have called it the Saito method. For those of you who think it's a little bit of a hassle, I do apologize, but I think it's a valuable practice. As game planners, we were always writing text anyway, so I don't think it's much of a hassle for us to write a daily or weekly report. By the way, have you played Dragon Quest X Online, Mr. Mitsui? I thought it would be very good to raise the classes and learn passive skills, and all your equipment gets refreshed every 7 levels. So I switched classes every 7 levels and raised all of them to about level 35. The passive skills provide advantageous effects to players that would try out all sorts of classes, but they ended up becoming a sort of tedious prerequisite for the game. On another note, I really liked how you can register your character as a support partner for others to call upon and receive experience and gold when they were out and using it, to the point where I thought myself, why didn't we think of this for 11? Where support partners are added as solo players could join an online game and experience it even when playing alone. What I had in mind was actually made Madely Quest. While players didn't interact with each other in real time, they were able to bridge connections between them, and we felt that Dragon Quest X Online was an online game. Not everything had to be done in real time, so we added the support partner system for players to interact with each other. As a feature, however, it's really just a rested bonus. And so while they will vary with each game, rested bonuses provide some sort of bonuses that accumulates when players aren't actively playing the game. Guys, this is epic number 3. Hopefully you enjoyed. I enjoyed really kind of diving into it. It gives such interesting insight both into Final Fantasy 11, 14, Dragon Quest 10 as well. And yeah, I'm looking forward to filming and recording part 4 for you. So be sure to keep it locked here on the channel if you're excited about that coverage. And yeah, I'm going to wrap it up. Thanks for being here. You guys are awesome. Hopefully you guys enjoy what I've got hidden for you at the end screen. But until then, take care.